Hey y'all, my name is Priscilla and welcome back to my channel. So today I am doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I did this tag last year. Everyone knows how this tag works. I was also tagged by Jacqueline over at 6 Minutes for Me. So thank you for tagging me and giving me more motivation to do this. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. So the first question is the best book that you've read so far in the year 2019. This was really hard for me to choose. I feel like I've read a really great selection of books this year. I've rated a couple of things 5-star already this year. And I think the best book that I've read so far is Freshwater by Koike Emeze. I read this very recently in June. It was part of my Queer Lit TBR, which I went ahead and just extended the entire month of June instead of just that week. Yeah, I love this. I adored it so much. It is sort of literary fiction. It's sort of autobiographical. The author, Emeze, is on the trans non-binary spectrum. They are also Nigerian, Obanje, and they document their discovery and their spiritual experience of these other gods and beings, completely encompassing their body. And it's just written so beautifully and it's so unique. I know that I haven't read much into African literary fiction, but this one is one that you should definitely look out for. So in preparation for this video, I actually came across a couple of articles of interviews with Emeze about Freshwater. And I know that they don't like the Western lens that is used oftentimes to critique and review this book. And it's really easy for us to read this if you aren't aware of the Igbo tradition and the Igbo spiritual idea of the Obanje. And this isn't a book about mental health, although it is often compared to dissociative identity disorder because the voices inside of Ada, the main character in this book, speak to her and kind of take over her body when she goes through very traumatic experiences. But Emeze makes it very clear that that is not the intention of this book. And it's beautiful. I highly recommend that you read this. Okay, so the next question is the best sequel you've read so far in the year 2019. Okay, so I've read a couple of series sequels actually this year. So there was a bit of a battle to choose which was going to be my favorite sequel. I've read a number of sequels in the Artemis Fowl series, which is part of the Artemis Fowl Readalong. I read, of course, the Xenogenesis series, and I have read a couple of middle grade series, but I think that the one that really takes the cake is going to be The Love Sugar Magic. This is the book 2 in that series that I read earlier this year. This is just a wonderful middle grade series that just speaks volumes for me as a Mexican American person in Texas that never saw themselves in middle grade literature. And this is a story about cocinera brujas that live in a small town in Texas and that incorporate magic in all their baked goods and that just live for their community, that work for their community. And the main character, Leonora, in this story is discovering the magic in her family and the magic within herself. And it's just amazing. I love it so much. And this is definitely the best sequel that I've read. I actually thought that the sequel was a little bit better than the debut because I rated this one 5 stars. I rated this one 4 stars. So just the development of the family members in this story just warmed my heart. And I can't wait for the third book in the series because there actually was a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of this one. But yeah, by far the best sequel that I've read so far this year. Okay, so question 3 is a new release that you want to read but haven't gotten to quite yet. For me, I think that is going to be With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. Ooh, that's got a bad glare because it's a library book. Elizabeth Acevedo's first book, The Poet X, was one of my favorite books last year from the year 2018. And I don't know why I didn't put this on my most anticipated reads because obviously I anticipated that. And this book actually follows a teenage mother and she has these dreams of going to culinary school and cooking. And I love food in books. Like this is the book that I'm anticipating most for the next half of the year. So I really need to get to it. And it's also summertime. So it kind of feels like the right thing to do right now. Okay, question number 4 is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. For me, I think that's going to be In the Dreamhouse by Carmen Maria Machado. So this is a nonfiction memoir that is about a queer sapphic relationship and the domestic abuse that is in that relationship. Machado wrote the short story collection called Her Body and Other Parties that was released, I believe, last year, and I read those stories, and a lot of them I really enjoyed. She kind of writes horror, sort of magical realism stories, and I've heard really great things about In the Dreamhouse. It doesn't come out, I think, until the fall, which I think is very fitting for fall, and I love memoirs, and I know that especially in the queer community that domestic abuse is a huge issue, and I really want to read more stories that include those types of topics because a lot of people don't know about that and don't know how to handle situations like that appropriately. Especially I'm thinking like about law enforcement and like medical facilities like hospitals and ERs and things kind of dismiss those types of domestic abuse cases. And also, I really love the cover. It looks very like pulpy and very dark. So yeah, that's my most anticipated for the second half of the year. Question number 5 is your biggest disappointment this year. And unfortunately, this is going to go to The Stormrunner by J.C. Cervantes. So this is a middle grade fantasy that is based in Mayan folklore. And that, along with the representation of a disabled main character, were probably the main reasons why I was so excited for this. And in the end, I felt so disappointed by because one of those characterizations was done, in my opinion, very distastefully. And distastefully? Is that a word? I think that's a word. While the Mayan folklore, while those elements, while the fantasy plot really had me wanting to finish this book, the ableism language used to describe Zane, the main character, his self-deprecating comments, anytime he refers to his leg, his cane, it's almost with such self-hatred. Those made me want to DNF it, but I really wanted to see if his growth as a character was going to come to like this very happy self-acceptance message in the end. And I felt like the end caps of the books, like the beginning and the end, have this message of self-acceptance, but the chunk in the middle, like where was the editor to tell this author that you need to have sensitivity readers read this? Because a lot of the reason, I'm trying not to get into spoilers here, but a lot of the plot devices are tied actually to Zane's leg. There's a lot of explanations for that I hated, and for that reason it was a huge disappointment for me. I didn't see how he started out loving himself and ended loving himself, but throughout the main course of the novel hated himself. So I guess I just wanted better representation in that, and I don't think that because the Mayan folklore is done so well in this that all the other shit gets passed, that I can overlook all the other crappy characterization for that character. So question 6 is the biggest surprise, and I think the biggest surprise this year was definitely another recent read that I read in June for Pride Month, and that is going to be I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shraya. This is such a short but hard-hitting, impactful book. I think it comes in at about 96 pages. I listened to the audiobook, which was narrated by the author, and it was about like an hour and a half. And it's a nonfiction book about toxic masculinity and about misogyny and feminism, and it's all from a trans perspective. Vivek Shraya is a trans Canadian Indian artist, and she talks a lot about some of the very scary experiences that she's had as a trans woman, about the harassment, about having to humanize herself by sensationalizing horror and murder and brutality against trans folks. And I thought it was just such a great deeper dive into feminism, into intersectionality, and how that plays into feminism. And I think it should be required reading for cis folks, and especially cis queer folks that think they are immune to misogyny for some reason, because she definitely confronts a lot of those myths and misconceptions. And it's just a really easy, highly recommended book. So question 7 is a favorite new author, and that can be a debut author or a author that is new to you. For me, that's definitely going to be N.K. Jemisin. And she is a new author to me because I just picked up the 5th season this year, and oh my god, I get the hype. It's amazing. I already talked about this on my channel before. I really think that N.K. Jemisin's The Broken Earth series is going to be a favorite of mine once I finally get to the second book, which I think this is a good reminder of that. So since I last talked about this book, I did listen to an interview with her on a podcast called, I think it's a long title, How to Survive the End of the World. And she spoke about how while this is a story about an apocalypse of the world, it's also about an apocalypse of the self of the main character. And if you've read that first book, you probably know what I'm talking about. But my mind was just blown by that. And I was like, wow, a whole other layer of things to think about when I continue on in the series. So N.K. Jemisin is definitely a new favorite. The next question is your favorite fictional crush, and I really don't have fictional crushes, so I'm going to skip over that one. So question 9 is your newest favorite character. I had a couple of options for this, but I think I'm going to go with Caroline from Hurricane Child, and this is by Case and Calendar. So Hurricane Child is a middle grade that is set in the Caribbean. Caroline is Black and she's queer, and she falls in love for the first time. And she's also haunted by these sort of shadowy spirits, and also by, I think, a depression that she's going through after her mother has left. And she's on this mission of finding her and finding herself in the process. And Caroline is headstrong, and she's strong-willed, and she's a little lonely, but I love her so much, and I care about her and want the best for her, and I wanted the best for her entire story. And Caroline just confronts so many things as a young child that I think is so important. She confronts homophobia and misogynoir and colorism, and especially homophobia steeped in religion, because she goes to a religious elementary school, and I adore her. She's definitely a new favorite character for me. Okay, the next question is a book that made you cry, or the saddest book that you've read this year. If y'all are new here, I love sad books. Like, that is my shit. I tend to read a lot of sad books and then have to switch to like happy middle grade or romance or comic books and graphic novels to kind of get me out of like that sad state. But I read a lot of sad things. I haven't actually cried this year though, but I think the first book that came to mind for me was Blood, Water, Paint by Joy McCullough. And this book is a YA historical that is written in verse. It follows a 16th century Italian painter named Artemisia Gentileschi. The story is really sad because it sort of is centered around her rape. She is raped by a fellow painter that she trusted, and a lot of the story is about the misogyny that she faces, about her father taking credit and her father and other men taking credit for her work, so she never gets the respect she deserves, and then she is raped and she deals with that shame and that pain on her own until she takes her case to court with her father. Because of that just general topic, and because it was written in verse, I actually listened to the audiobook, which I highly recommend because I really loved that audiobook. Because of that, it felt like the book I should talk about for this question. So on the flip side of that, the next question is a book that made you happy. The wish fulfillment in Red, White, and Royal Blue is a blessing that continues to give the more and more that people pick this up. So this is a new adult contemporary romance that follows the first son and the Prince of Wales. And Alex is biracial. He's half white, half Mexican, and he's also bisexual. He's questioning at the beginning of this story and then comes to the realization of his bisexuality. And Henry is just a lovely sappy Pisces that I adore because I am also a sappy Pisces. And Henry is also hasn't come out yet to the public because of political reasons. And I adored this because of so many reasons. One thing that I will say, when people talk about this book, they don't really mention that Alex is half Mexican and half white, which is things that I want to know, because there's so many scenes when he is talking to his dad, and they go to his dad's house in the summer. He takes Henry there, and I love those scenes. And they talk a lot about Texas culture. They go to Austin at some point. They talk about Houston. And I think people don't realize how like international Texas is, and especially Houston and Austin, like the major cities are actually blue. Like, yeah, we are a very red conservative state as a whole, but there are brown people here and we all don't fit that mold. I think that's important to mention when you review this book because I love that so much. But yeah, this is just an easy book to choose as a book that made me happy. Okay, and question 12 is your favorite book to film adaptation this year. I think the only one that I've watched this year is Into the Spiderverse, which is an adaptation from the Marvel comics for Miles Morales. Yeah, that was my favorite, and I need to watch that again soon because the animation in that film is amazing. Oh my god, they went above and beyond. It's totally worth all of the awards that it is getting. And also the Afro-Latinx representation is done really well. It's just a really, really great movie. If I can include a TV show adaptation, I also really like Marie Kondo's Tidying Up series on Netflix. That is an adaptation of the life-changing magic of tidying up. And that show, I think, just does a lot of great things for a lot of working class families, as many of which are actually people of color. And she just kind of comes into their lives for a couple weeks, a couple months, and makes them focus on things that make them happy. And I love that. And I think that's a great adaptation. Question 13 is a favorite review that you did, and the Booktube version of this is the favorite video that you've done so far this year. So I'm really proud of my Xenogenesis review video that I did and the discussion part. If you haven't read that series, the first part of that video is completely spoiler free, but I really love that series, and it was actually really hard for me to come up with a review for that series because there's a lot to discuss and I wasn't sure how I was going to go about it, but I think that it came out pretty good. I got pretty good reception for that. So that is definitely one that I really loved. I also am going to shout out my Denver vlog because I feel like my vlogs have been getting a lot better and I'm really enjoying doing that as well. So those are definitely my two favorite videos. Question number 14 is the most beautiful book that you've bought this year or that you've been gifted. So I was just going through my bookshelf trying to find a book that I think would fit this, and I don't really have any because I read a lot of library books, and a lot of the books that I've gotten as gifts were actually for Christmas, so they don't really fit within this year. So I'm gonna have to go with either Black Leopard, Red Wolf, which has been haunting me because I don't know if I want to read this book anymore, but more into that in another video. And also Love, Sugar, Magic, so maybe these two. And the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I have videos on both of these. I really want to focus on the Book Riot Read Harder Challenge, which I'm actually doing very well at. At this point today, I've read about 15 out of 24 of those, so I am on schedule for those. But ones that I'm really falling behind on are my anticipated reads for the year 2019. I think I've only read 2 of those out of 10, so I need to catch up on those. All right, and that was the mid-year book freakout tag. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. So for this, I definitely want to tag a couple of booktubers that I've been enjoying recently. I want to tag Ariel over at She Wants the Diction, Andrea over at Book Ramble. If you haven't done this video yet, you should definitely do it. Oh, Cynthia over at Book Whimsy. I would love to see your take on this tag as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Bye!